Irv, just as we start off, the Minnesota Vikings have scored again in the Metrodome on the Chicago Bears, and so now put it down 13-7. The Vikings will be attempting the extra point. This was the early action. I'll tell you, Irv, Jim McMahon looks good.
Boy, he does. A young quarterback here. Here's Emery Moorhead, former wide receiver from the Jets, goes up there as a tight end for a score.
Now, this is the Vikes' first touchdown. It's a slot left. Sammy White with a beautiful outside move. He draws one-on-one coverage, obviously, because Rashad is taking the cornerback deep in the end zone again. 13-7. Now they add the extra point. 14-7. The Vikes ahead of the Bears. Cincinnati and the Raiders, 21-10. And Irv reports that the Raiders' Marcus Allen is having a tough time of it on that turf in bad weather conditions. Meanwhile, Washington and Philadelphia. And Irv, you've been monitoring this game. You've got some highlights for us here.
Let's take a look at it. Of course, Dick Vermeil is standing on the sideline with Harold Carmichael, his #1 receiver. But Joe Theismann is really the man to stop. Here he comes out in what they call a dash pattern, goes upfield to number 87, downtown Charlie Brown. He goes downtown for 65 yards and a touchdown. Charlie
Brown has scored in each of their games so far, and the Redskins are for real. And meanwhile, Irv, Buffalo and Baltimore, Frank Cush's young team under fire again. 17-0 Bills now. They are in the second quarter of that game. St. Louis and Atlanta. And, of course, I'm surprised by this so far. The Cardinals are outplaying the Falcons 14-6. Of course, you're enjoying that game on CBS. And New England and Houston. Well, we have for the New England Patriots Steve Grogan. He has 17 points. Archie Manning now quarterbacking Houston. He trails with only 7. Meanwhile, Green Bay and the Jets. A tough game in Shea Stadium. 13-6 right now, and amazingly, both teams missed extra points early in that contest.
And two great kickers. Who would have thought that Jan Stener would miss an extra point, but he did.
Now, we have got Philip Epps has been going wild for the Packers. He has scored both their touchdowns, and the NFL Today continues on CBS after these messages from your local stations. Minnesota. And Tommy Kramer, tendonitis. What tendonitis? 35-7 now. The Vikings even their record under Bud Grant at 2-2. And the Bears under Mike Ditka, well, they sink now to 1-3. But Jim McMahon had the Bears on the board first. Emery Moorhead, the tight end, that was a 50-yarder. But after that, it was Kramer and the Viking attack. Watch now, slot left. Beautiful move by Sammy White. Draws one-on-one with Rashad taking the cornerback a little bit deeper there, and that knotted the game all up, and Kramer was not finished. Here he was coming back again.
This time, Joe Simpson, the tight end, taking a block now inside the 5-yard line, sneaking in from 1 yard out.
And again we have Kramer, this time rolling out of trouble in the Metrodome, going deep downfield, and again it was Sammy White, this time for 65 yards. And Kramer pulls out, looks for Sammy, who caught his second touchdown on the game, and you got to wonder, where was Ahmad Rashad in that attack today?
Well, you know, it's sort of like in basketball. You always go to the man with the hot hand. Apparently, Sammy White had somebody in his hip pocket today.
All right, and of course, we had a final out of Cincinnati. Marcus Allen and the Raiders were stopped by Forrest Gregg and the Bengals. 31-17 was the final in that game. Nasty weather conditions down there in Cincinnati. It had rained. It was a wet field. Now, here is Kenny Anderson of the Bengals. He'll go to Rodney Holman in the end zone for a touchdown, and the Bengals were up by 7. As for Jim Plunkett, a quick turnaround after that tough Monday night comeback against San Diego. This one's picked off by Ken Riley. He hauls it back 53 yards for a touchdown. That is the 53rd career interception by Riley. Tops in the NFL. But Plunkett wasn't finished. Cliff Branch got open on this play. 34 yards for the touchdown. It was 14-10 to Bengals over the Raiders. Plunkett back again, this time going to Marcus Allen for a 14-yard gain. They stopped Allen from scrimmage. 8 carries, no gain, so Plunkett had to throw the ball to try to get him some room. Now it's Anderson. He'll be forced to scramble here, and he does indeed. From tiny Augustana, he can still leg it into the end zone for 11 yards and a touchdown, and so the Bengals would dearly love to get back to that Super Bowl and try to win it this time. All of these are final scores again. Washington downing Philadelphia this afternoon, 13-9. We're going to ask Lawrence Taylor about Joe Theismann after you see these plays right here. There's big Harold Carmichael and Dick Vermeil. It's been a tough season for him. Now here comes Charlie Brown. He's caught a touchdown pass in each of the Redskins' 4 games so far this year. 65 yards on this play right here by the young man who's out of South Carolina State. Now it was Ron Jaworski after a tough first half. trying to bring them back against this rugged Redskin defense that has really picked up the pace as they stop Louis Giamona. We told you Wilbert Montgomery was going to play. What did we know? He didn't play at all. Finally, it was Harold Carmichael at 6'8", beating the smaller cornerback and getting on into the end zone for a touchdown that made it close. Then with time running out, down to a minute 50, Jaworski working to the sideline, served up the interception. Tony Peters, and that stopped the Eagles' drive. And after that, the Redskins simply took charge of the football game, and it was a long, tough afternoon for Ron Jaworski. And Lawrence, what about Theismann now and the Redskins? Unbeaten, you've gone up against him. How good a quarterback is he right now?
Well, Theismann is such a great athlete, and also he's intelligent. He can drop back and roll out of the pocket and scramble and hit the open receiver. So he adds a great dimension to the Washington Redskins team.
Lawrence, as a linebacker, you're so active. Are you conscious of someone like Theismann as you make your move in? Do you kind of have to hesitate to make sure he's not going to try to come around you?
Well, a lot of time when I rush, I like to go inside, take the inside, and most of the time I can run the quarterback down if he tries to scramble out. But against Joe, you have to stay outside because you never know when he's going to try to break the pocket, and he can cause a lot of trouble.
Boy, a big doubleheader game next week. Redskins and the Dallas Cowboys. You better get done early so you can watch that game, Lawrence. We will continue here on the NFL Today in just a moment. Back to the scoreboard, and this could be a very long, tough season for Frank Cush, but if he keeps it up, he's got a shot at John Elway. 20-0. The Bills down the Colts. They are now 0-4 on the season. Atlanta and St. Louis. As many of you know, Atlanta had a chance to tie it. Mick Luckhurst missed a field goal at the buzzer, and the Cardinals win that one by 3. New England and Houston. Both teams led by new quarterbacks today. Steve Grogan gets the job done. 29 over Archie Manning and the Oilers. They're 21. And finally, the Packers and the Jets. Billed is the game of the day, and it lived up to its reputation. It did, except for the kickers. They kept missing extra points and field goals. And here's a man you could be hearing a lot about, Philip Epps, a world-class sprinter. He got open twice for Lynn Dickey and scored the Packer touchdowns. But Richard Todd is a rapidly maturing quarterback. And Lamb Jones, another world-class sprinter, he gets open for a touchdown. And Bart Starr knew that he was going to need some help. And he got it here from Mike Douglas, who intercepted the ball and got it back down to the Jet 24-yard line. And you know the Packers story. They got Lofton, they got Jefferson, they got Ivory. They were drawing all the attention. So let's go back, and Philip Epps, a 12th round draft choice out of TCU, still another touchdown. But then it was the winning touchdown. Mike Augustiniak from 5 yards out. He got the score. And Lawrence, I got to ask you something. The Sack Exchange, they get all the publicity in this town. You ever get jealous, all that ink and all that attention they get?
No, the Sack Exchange is a pretty good defensive line, I respect them, but I feel we have a good defensive line also and good linebackers. There's not a guy on the Jets team I would trade for anybody on our team.
Yeah, you told her, of course, this is Giant City, right?
You got it.
Okay, let's get back to the scoreboard. We still have some other scores to report because, of course, we have some games that have just gotten underway. The Los Angeles Rams, they can't be any worse. They're scoreless now against the Chiefs. They are in the first quarter of that game out in Anaheim, and the Chiefs have just scored and added the extra point. 7-0. It's the first time the Chiefs have ever played the Rams out there in Los Angeles. The Broncos right now have kicked the field goal. They lead the Chargers in San Diego 3-0. They are in the first quarter of that game. And again, these are contests just underway. The Seahawks with a field goal. How about that over the Steelers? The Seahawks' new coach, of course, is Mike McCormick, and he is trying to win for the second time this season. And so we have one more. The Saints and the 49ers are scoreless. They are in the first quarter of that game. The Saints 2-1, the 49ers 1-2. Now, next Saturday, the real season begins and ends for two college teams. For the two military academies, Army and Navy, all the other games this year have been mere training maneuvers. Next week, when they go at each other in the traditional war, it's for keeps.
All those that like to give the big blue team their undying support, like to beat Army 6 years in a row, like to have the West Point football team disband and get a big piece of mule meat this weekend, answer by saying aye!
Of all the rivalries in college football, none is as spirited as the one between Army and Navy. And this year's battle, the 83rd meeting between the cadets and the midshipmen. In the 40s, Army dominated. One of the greatest college football teams of all time, led by Heisman Trophy winners Doc Blanchard and Glenn Davis. Then the Navy started to come back under quarterbacks like Roger Staubach.
The night before the Army-Navy game, I really could not sleep. The only game my whole career that I could not sleep the night before the game, I was that nervous. It was a good, healthy nervousness, but all I heard about was Army-Navy plebe year. Here I was a starting quarterback. The only time in my history of athletics that I was that nervous before a game where I couldn't sleep. It was a big game, 102,000 fans at one time in the old Kennedy Stadium, and it was a big deal, bigger than any Super Bowl I ever played in, as far as that one particular moment in that one event.
There'll be a lot of sleepless nights this week as Army and Navy get ready to play for bragging rights and a lot of pride.
We know that we've got to do it. It's a matter of pride to us now, and we're going to do it.
Got to do it. And a reminder, Army-Navy starts at high noon next Saturday with the NCAA Today here on CBS. Let's ask Lawrence the Greek who he likes next week, Army or Navy, big fella?
Well, you know, a game like that with such tradition is hard to pick because you throw all records out the window. And,
you sound just like somebody else I know.
But I like Navy. Navy looked very impressive a couple weeks ago against Notre Dame, and I think they'll have the more pride and we'll win the game.
All right, Lawrence, thank you very much for being with us. Good luck next week. And Irv, we'll see you next weekend. A couple of big games on Sunday. Minnesota, Miami, the Cowboys, and the Redskins. Have a nice week, everybody.